Warning, spoilers ahead. Today, I'm going to recap a Korean comedy drama movie released in 2020 called Best Friend. The movie is about an intelligence agency team tasked to monitor and frame a politician from the opposition party. As time goes on, the team leader starts to sympathize with his target. Will he be able to complete his mission? Let's find out together. In the politically chaotic year of 1985 in South Korea, Lee, a well-known political figure of the opposition party, returns to Korea after almost 3 years of political exile. He plans to run for president in the next election against the current president, and the citizens seem to support him. He landed at Gimpo International Airport in Seoul and is escorted by 2 of his assistants. Yet, the inevitable happens. Several men kidnap Lee away while his assistants are getting his luggage. They try to chase and save Lee but fail. The following week, Kim, the head of the intelligence agency, is frustrated by the increasing pressure from the media regarding Lee's kidnapping. His assistant proposes a house arrest instead of jail time to calm the public, while the agency plans to frame Lee as a communist. The assistant suggests that Dae, captain of the intel team in Busan, and an anti-communist, is perfect for the job. The next day, Dae is checked and allowed to pass through at a checkpoint within the area of Lee's jailhouse as he goes to move in. This checkpoint angers the already restless journalists and Lee supporters, who eventually storm the barriers. 2 of them manage to enter Lee's house area and take pictures of his family. Meanwhile, the intel team is stationed exactly next door to Lee's house. There, Dae meets his 2 subordinates, Sik and Chul, for the first time when they are relaxing instead of working. Dae then barges in and finds how messy his working station is, making him upset. He warns his subordinates to clean the mess and rearrange the house to mimic Lee's living room. He tasks Chul to observe and follow Lee's family maid. On the other hand, Sik is tasked to monitor closely Lee's habits while Dae himself will note any suspicious activities. The following week, Dae manages to listen a conversation of a councilman with Lee who is still on house arrest, effectively stopping their attempt for future coordination. This accomplishment grants him praise from Kim. Excited with his result, Dae then proposes another plan to Kim, that they need to let Lee's kids attend their schools and be allowed to visit. His plan is meant to prevent human rights issues regarding house arrest and also to lure in Lee's biggest ally, Min. Kim likes the idea and gives it a go. Soon after, Lee receives his first guest at the front door, none other than Min himself. Both men chat and reconcile at the dining table while Dae and his team are spying closely next door, grumbling over Lee's habit of eating. After their lunch, Min proceeds to unload items he managed to smuggle inside his leather handbag. Dae hears in suspicion as both men talked about how it would solve the problem in a single attempt, but is unable to find out what the thing is, except for the noisy crinkles it made. Dae and his team continues the eavesdrop until late in the evening after Min left, and the crinkle noises returned, but they are still unable to figure it out. Later, Dae goes to the rooftop to smoke but is unaware of Lee's presence on the rooftop next door. Lee shouts to Dae and asks for a cigarette, but the startled Dae run into hiding immediately. The next day, the intel team continues eavesdropping on Lee and his family as they tune to a local radio presenter who read a letter requesting a song. However, the letter is actually sent by Lee, as is discovered by Chul. Dae thinks there is more to the song, and Sik then shows him the lyrics of the song. He believes that it's a coded message from Lee to his followers outside, as the lyrics imply a citizens' rebellion. As a result, Dae instructs an emergency report to be filed to the intelligence office. After receiving the report, Kim bans the song and all other songs that have similar lyrics, claiming that it has communist values. The following day, Min and Lee discuss the banning as a silly attempt, while Min accidentally steps on an eavesdropping device on the lawn. The team tries to act upon it, but suddenly, a trowel flew over from the next door. Dae and Lee see each other's faces for the first time as Lee climbed the trowel to ask for his tool. Reluctantly, Dae returns it and accidentally hit Lee in the head. Dae apologizes, but Lee said it was nothing, and both men spend their time fixing cracks on the wall they share. That evening, Dae finds a plastic bag on their rooftop, possibly thrown by Lee, that contains vegetables and a kind letter as a neighbor. After a hilarious debate between the team members about possible poisoning, they eat it anyway. After dinner, they hear a series of coughs on the speakers and finally notice that carbon monoxide poisoning was endangering Lee's family. After several attempts of signaling, Dae finally threw a huge brick to break the window and save the family. His action infuriates Kim, and he reminds Dae of his duties to the country. The team is then tasked to plant fake evidence in Lee's house. The next morning, Lee's son accidentally enters the wiretapping room as his sister delivers rice cookies to the team. Dae sees it as an opportunity to plant the fake evidence that Kim tasked them to do and goes to Lee's house to deliver boiled potatoes in response to the rice cookies. Dae and the seemingly suspicious Lee talk in the living room as Dae tries to see an opening to plant the fake evidence. Eventually, he has a chance to do it but is nearly caught in the act, so he decides to cancel the attempt to prevent Lee from being suspicious of him. Later, Dae convinces Lee to take his son to visit the public bath. Sik and Chul manage to sneak into Lee's house, and a hilarious cat and mouse game ensues between them against the housekeeper. While at it, Dae and Lee talk about issues related to the small people that Lee wished to address, and both men seemingly grow to respect each other. Later that night, Dae finds his brother tortured by the intelligence agency for protesting in Incheon. He begs Kim for mercy, but instead, Dae received a scolding, stating that Kim knew Dae was smuggling Lee and his son into the bathhouse. Dae promises that all his actions were made so that the agency could accomplish its plan. The next morning, Kim and Hyuk visit Lee with several other agents. After a heated debate, the agency searches the house for the planted evidence, but instead, they discover that Lee's daughter is the head of the student assembly that incited a recent anti-government protest. Lee is heartbroken seeing her daughter arrested, so in despair, he begs for her release and will take responsibility for himself as a bargain. Kim left as Min enters the premises. He instructs Hyuk that it is time for spicy stew fish. In the meantime, Lee finds that his house has indeed been bugged. He angrily manages to disable a few but left only one. Min finds Lee upset and losing his will to fight the ruling party. Min tries to encourage Lee, but he rips up the presidential run speech that Min wrote for him instead because he thinks that he is unable to defend his own family, let alone a country. The team listens in silence to the conversation next door until a phone rang with the grim news of Dae's mother's death, so he leaves for home to take care of her funeral. He returns to his work later that night, only to find cops standing guard in front of Lee's house. There, Lee is standing near the exit, wearing an all-black suit. It turns out that Min has died due to carbon monoxide poisoning, although the team begins to question the abnormality of his death. Early next morning, Lee finally decides to assemble the speech Min wrote for him that he ripped back then. Knowing that Dae is listening, he asks to be heard as he has one else at the time, and Dae listens wholeheartedly. Later on, Lee decides to run for the presidential campaign and plans to announce it at Min's funeral the next day as a tribute. His supporters warn him of the risk, but Lee insists. At night, Lee asks Dae for a cigarette but is eventually choked by the smoke. He confesses that he never smoked and that he always asked Dae for a cigarette because he needed a friend. Dae eventually guesses that Lee knew his disguise all along and tries to warn him that he'll be in danger if he goes out the next day, but Lee just brushes it off. The next morning, Lee's escort comes as planned while the intelligence agency later planned to kill Lee by hitting his car with a truck at an intersection. Next door, Dae and his team observe anxiously as an altercation is happening at the front gate, despite it being part of the agency's plan. Dae tries to fail the plan by asking the checkpoint officer to stop Lee's car at the barricade, but Lee's daughter tries to dissipate the altercation by slitting her wrist. Her action forces the guarding officers to let Lee leave due to a medical emergency. Dae drives to chase the party while Hyuk radios him to tail Lee's car. Meanwhile, an unexpected thing happens as Lee switches cars with his daughter. Dae tries to warn Hyuk about the upcoming misfire, but his radio is jammed. Suddenly, the car with Lee's daughter is hit by a truck. Dae brings her to the hospital but unfortunately, they couldn't save her life. Meanwhile, Lee hears about his daughter's accident at the funeral and braces himself even more to announce his presidential run. He then comes to the hospital after the speech, breaking down in tears for seeing his dead daughter when Kim came to arrest him in the hospital. Fast forward, Lee has spent 2 months in prison while waiting for his court verdict. Dae is visiting the zoo with his wife and son when Kim and Hyuk confront him, threatening him to do one final task for framing Lee, or else his family will be hurt. As instructed, Dae starts tampering with the spying tapes to fabricate evidence, but to Kim's surprise, he instead sent a tape of Kim's plan to frame Lee to the media. This causes Lee to be released from prison, and he announces that he is running for president to the public. Meanwhile, Dae, who is in hiding, hears the news that the agency tries to say the tapes are a hoax. Suddenly, Sik came in to help Dae hide, but upon hearing that the agency is planning to kill Lee again that day, he makes Sik stop his car and join him in trying to save Lee and save the country from dictatorship. Afterwards, the two quickly drive to Uido where Lee's presidential rally was to be held. As he anxiously monitors the radio, Sik almost ruins their rescue effort by running into a bus at Mokpo Bridge. As their car fails to ignite, Dae decides to perform the unexpected. He runs naked along the Mokpo Bridge, checking every car trapped in traffic for Lee. More people take notice of this act, and Dae plays along with the lunatic at loose game by stopping abundant cars from the opposite direction, in the hope of creating obstacles and stopping the oncoming killer truck. On the bridge, Dae finally locates Lee's car, but he is unable to recognize Dae's face behind the paper bag he used as cover. Desperately, Dae hits the side window glass as the killer truck comes closer. Sik manages to ignite his van and attempts to drive onto the truck but missed. Hyuk, who drove the killer truck himself this time, manages to drive between obstacles and rams his truck head first into Lee's car. But just before, Dae manages to pull Lee away and throw themselves onto the road. Lee finally recognizes his neighbor, and Dae learns the crinkle sound from a long time ago is from a plastic bag that Lee used for feet medication. The movie closes with Dae and his wife preparing their soon-opening public bathhouse. His son is eating, while on TV, an inauguration is being held for Lee as the new president. A knock is heard on the door, and to everyone's surprise, it is the president himself. Lee comes to fulfill his promise, to have a meal with Dae. Sometimes humanity and sympathy could easily be disregarded when it comes to politics. Fortunately, Dae realizes that his target, Lee, is just as human as he is. Do you think that their friendship could happen in real life? Let us know what you think in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Thank you for watching, and as always, see you next time.